you're named the trustee of a trust, there are a lot of things that you're going to need to do, whether you know about them or not. And in this video, we'll walk through all the trustee duties that you'll need to follow. But before we start, I'll give you a brief rundown on what a trust is. A trust at its very basic level is a three-party arrangement. The first party is the grantor, who's the person who sets up the trust and puts assets into it. The second person is the trustee, and this person is responsible for managing the assets of the trust. The third person is the beneficiary, who receives the benefit of the trust, and in some cases, they may demand distributions from the trust. And the biggest benefit of setting up a trust is that you get to avoid the probate process. The probate process is where somebody dies and everyone has to go into court and have a judge decide how those assets are distributed. And I've been to probate court before, and believe me, those probate cases can get really messy. They're expensive, they're time-consuming, and everyone involved in the probate case is emotionally charged. And when there's a dispute that involves family money, things can get really messy. But luckily, the best way to avoid probate is to set up a trust and follow the trust terms. So how does somebody become a trustee? Well, this usually happens when somebody sets up a trust, then they die. And after their death, they appoint a trustee to administer the trust and distribute their assets after their death. And this trustee can either be a professional or a close family member. But regardless, if you're a trustee, there's a lot of fiduciary duties that you're gonna need to follow. And you'll also owe these fiduciary duties to the beneficiaries of that trust. So what is a fiduciary duty? Well, a fiduciary duty is a duty that requires somebody in charge to act in the best interest of somebody else. And if you're a trustee, you have a duty to act in not only the best interest of the trust, but also the best interests of the beneficiaries. But in order to do so, there are a lot of duties that you're gonna need to follow. There are a lot of trustee duties out there. And to make these easier for you to understand, I'm gonna boil them down into 5 different types of duties that you must follow as a trustee. The first duty is to abide by the terms of the trust. Most trusts have trust agreements that spell out your duties. And if they're listed there, you as the trustee must follow them. These can include things like how to distribute trust assets to the beneficiaries, as well as how a trustee can resign if they need to. The second set of duties is financial duties, and this involves managing and protecting assets. And these can include protecting real property, securing bank accounts, and making sure that everything else is in order. It also involves prudent investing, and this ensures that the money in the trust grows and that the trustee is making wise investment decisions on behalf of the beneficiaries. Another thing is this involves making distributions to beneficiaries. And lastly, the trustee may also have discretionary decisions to withhold distributions to the beneficiaries. And this can come in really handy because there may be a situation where the beneficiary of that trust is financially irresponsible. And if that's the case, then the trustee may be able to withhold distributions to them. And these types of trusts are called spendthrift trusts. The third set of duties involves record keeping. And this involves keeping records of assets, bank accounts, and other financial statements. This also involves preparing tax filings and paying taxes as well. In many situations, trustees are required to do an annual accounting of the trust and submit that accounting to the beneficiaries. But unfortunately, these accountings are largely overlooked, and there are a lot of situations where trustees don't do these accountings. But if you're a trustee, it's best practice to do these accountings every year. And lastly, you must provide information to the beneficiary. And this is important because beneficiaries in some situations may have the right to demand information from the trustee. And this is because beneficiaries have the right to inspect the trust. Now, what information does a trustee have to furnish here? Well, in a lot of cases, this is financial information like accounts, bank statements, and other similar matters. The fourth duty is that the trustee must deal with the beneficiaries. One of these duties involves communicating matters to beneficiaries. And this is important because if beneficiaries don't receive this information, they may have the right to sue you. And if things get bad, you may have to resolve conflicts amongst the beneficiaries. And if you're a trustee and you run into this situation, you're going to need to make sure that you're impartial. And lastly, you may need to defend the trust in litigation. So if the trust is sued, you as the trustee are the defendant. Now, this mainly happens when trust beneficiaries are contesting a trust. And last but not least, trustees have a duty to be ethical. And this means that the trustee cannot touch the trust assets. They can't lend money from the trust to themselves, and they also can't sell trust assets to themselves. If they're the trustee, they must leave those assets in the trust, and they can't use them for any personal purposes. And lastly, the trustee has a duty to prudently administer the trust. Now, this involves exercising time, skill, and care to make sure that the trust terms are carried out properly to benefit the beneficiaries. So in conclusion, if you're named the trustee of a trust, there are a lot of duties that you're going to need to owe to beneficiaries, whether you know about them or not. And this is regularly overlooked because many people who are appointed trustees after somebody dies have no idea what they're getting into at the start. And if you're the trustee, you owe all those fiduciary duties to the beneficiaries. And what this means is that if you don't follow the trust terms or the fiduciary duties imposed on you, there's a good chance that you could be sued. I also have a new book called The 5 Tricks to Teach Your Kids About Money. You can download the book for free by clicking the link in the description below. If you're looking to start a business, you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with us at Corporate Direct by also clicking the link in the description below. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and turn on that notification bell. And I should warn you, the contents of this video are not legal advice and no attorney-client relationship has been formed.